This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch for Thursday, December 12th. I'm Mark Martin. Today, the House Judiciary Committee is meeting again to move ahead with the next steps in the Democrats' push to impeach President Trump. Israel facing an unprecedented third election in less than a year. We'll bring you a look at why it's happening and what comes next. Today, the election in Britain to determine the future Brexit, Britain's exit from the European Union. We'll tell you why anti-Semitism has now become a factor in the race. And on the lighter side, we'll take you to CBN's own special holiday celebration, the CBN Christmas Village. Those stories and more today on Newswatch. We begin today in Washington, where the House Judiciary Committee meets again this morning to decide whether to send the Democrats' articles of impeachment against President Trump to the full House for a vote. Today's meeting comes after a contentious debate in the committee that lasted late into the night last night, split along party lines, with Republicans defending the president and Democrats saying he should be impeached.
I hope that none of us attempt to justify behavior that we know in our heart is wrong.
Congress doesn't get to remove a president just because they don't like him.
And ABC News reports the president and his advisors are considering adding famed attorney Alan Dershowitz to his impeachment legal team. Polls show a small majority of Americans still oppose impeaching and removing the president, with independents strongly opposed. For the third time in less than a year, Israelis must vote for a national government. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, it comes after Israel's parliament was unable to form a coalition, and it puts Israel in uncharted political waters.
The Knesset had 21 days to form a government, but its time ran out on midnight Wednesday. The failure by Israel's parliament comes after both Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his chief political rival, former IDF Chief of Staff Benny Gantz, were unable to gain a 61-seat majority. Now Israelis face elections again on March 2nd. It's the third time within a calendar year, and it's possible the results might be the same as the previous two elections. Blue and white co-leader Yair Lapid warned Israelis about a bitter campaign.
Keep your children away from the television. These elections are going to be a festival of hate, violence, and disgust, so they will not see what the elected of the nation are telling them.
The third elections provide an opportunity for Benjamin Netanyahu to continue his political career. He faces 3 indictments on charges of fraud, bribery, and breach of trust. But until his trial is over, which could take months or even years, he can continue to serve as prime minister and participate in the next election. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
For more on the Israeli elections, we turn now to CBN News senior editor John Waggy in Jerusalem. John, how are Israelis reacting to the prospect of still another election?
Well, Mark, imagine if Americans had to endure races for Congress 3 times in 1 year, 1 calendar year, or you had to endure a race for the White House 3 times in 1 year. You'd be pretty sick of it. We're all sick of it by the time it ends anyway in November every 4 years. That's how Israelis are feeling. They're pretty weary about it. They're resigned to it because this has been going on for weeks and weeks now. They've seen the stalemate, and actually Israeli voters helped create it. So, they're resigned to the fact that they're going to the polls again on March 2nd.
What are the early polls predicting, and do you believe them?
The early polls are all saying essentially the same thing, which is that blue and white would make a slight gain right now. Likud would stay about where they are. But really, the polls now are just a snapshot. It's the same as the kind of polls that are taken in the U.S. I mean, head-to-head matchups between Trump and Joe Biden right now are meaningless. And in some ways, this one is too, although you've been through two stalemates already. The High Court today did affirm, along with the Attorney General, that Prime Minister Netanyahu is capable of remaining as Prime Minister. So that's a step forward in his corner. I don't believe the polls are going to hold this way, though, through the rest of the next 2 months.
The media spin is that results on March 2nd will be the same as the last 2 elections. Do you buy that? You talked a little bit about that with the preliminary polls, but break it down a little more for us.
Well, I really think that something is going to change the landscape this time. It could be Benjamin Netanyahu wants to annex the Jordan Valley, which the United States has kind of put their stamp of approval on. That would be a big deal across the political spectrum. The Jordan Valley is important to Israel's security. It's along the border with Jordan. He could move on an issue that could change things. The courts could rule on an issue that could change things. I just don't think this time the Israeli public is going to vote the same way they did the last two times. What will shake up the dynamic, I don't know, but I think something is going to shake it up.
Any predictions? Who do you think is going to come out on top when it comes to Prime Minister?
Well, I really can't predict. One thing to watch, Mark, is December 26th is the Likud primary internally. If Netanyahu can win a decisive victory there over Gideon Sa'ar, who is a challenger within his party, if Netanyahu, as it seems to look right now, would win the primaries easily, then he's cleared another major hurdle. Another thing Netanyahu has to do is decide whether to waive his immunity. If he keeps his immunity as prime minister to this indictment and fights it, then that's another way to keep him going. And we'll just have to see, but those are two big events that will affect the outcome. I'm not sure what else will result, but it's going to be tense, that's for sure.
All right, CBN News senior editor John Waggy reporting from Jerusalem. Thanks, John. Here at home, President Trump is targeting growing anti-Semitism on college campuses with a new executive order. It broadens a federal definition in order to protect Jews from discrimination while attending school. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy brings us that story from Washington.
President Trump has strongly supported Israel, and this latest move highlights how the administration continues to fight for the Jewish people. President Trump's latest executive order targets discrimination, specifically anti-Semitism on college campuses. It's reported this order also changes the definition of Judaism to include nationality. That means certain anti-Israel movements would be considered a form of anti-Semitism.
Sadly, BDS has also made disturbing headway on American college campuses.
Schools not addressing anti-Israel movements could lose federal funding under the Civil Rights Act of 1963. This past weekend at the Israeli-American Council National Summit, President Trump invited NYU grad Adela Kohab to talk about a complaint she filed before graduating.
My university failed to protect its Jewish community from ongoing harassment. From attacks on social media, to resolutions on student government, to boycotts, flag burnings, and physical assault.
Trump also called out anti-Semitism among lawmakers in D.C.
You've got to be very careful. Make no mistake, radical lawmakers who support the BDS movement are advancing anti-Israel and anti-Semitic propaganda, and Americans will not stand for it.
Trump's new order follows Tuesday's shooting in New Jersey that left 6 people dead in a targeted attack on a Jewish deli. Jersey City's mayor tweeted, "I'm Jewish and proud to live in a community like Jersey City. Hate and anti-Semitism have never had a place here in JC and will never have a place in our city." Now, critics argue this order could be used to limit criticism of Israeli government actions, but the White House says this move is not intended to limit freedom of expression. Ben Kennedy, CBN News, the White House.
Coming up, anti-Semitism has also become a factor in Britain as the British are voting in one of its most important elections since World War II. The dominant issue is Brexit leaving the European Union. But we'll tell you why anti-Semitism has also entered that race. That story when we come back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Today, the British are voting in one of their most important parliamentary elections since World War II. The result will determine the future of Brexit, if, how, and when Britain will exit the European Union. But another issue has crept into the race: anti-Semitism. Dale Hurd has this story from London.
Polling showed the race tightened up at the last minute, as Prime Minister Boris Johnson warned an indecisive outcome could lead to a hung parliament. But odds makers were still favoring Johnson's Conservative Party to win.
So, momentum has switched, but it doesn't change the fact that, as it stands, all the betting suggests that it will be a Conservative majority.
At stake is nothing less than the United Kingdom's future with or without the European Union. Britain voted to leave the European Union in 2016, then saw their leaders bungle it, delay it, and effectively deny it. But voters will have another chance to send a message to Parliament. Johnson has already been forced by Parliament to do what he vowed he wouldn't do: delay Brexit.
I'd rather be dead in a ditch. We will not allow this paralysis to continue.
If Johnson's Conservatives win a clear majority in Parliament, they're likely to move quickly to pass a Brexit withdrawal agreement. If Labour is somehow able to form a government, there will likely be another national referendum on whether to leave the European Union. But the Labour Party and its leader Jeremy Corbyn have been rocked by charges of anti-Semitism. The Simon Wiesenthal Center this week labeled Corbyn the biggest global threat to Jews.
I completely reject that. I became leader of the party. There were no processes in place to deal with anti-Semitism. We introduced rules to deal with it. We introduced an appeals procedure to deal with it, and we introduced an education process.
But whistleblowers told a London Sunday Times investigation that Corbyn's defense was, quote, lies. Corbyn is known to have embraced Hamas and Iran and to have compared Israel to the Nazis, and now stands accused of allowing anti-Semites with Nazi-like views to remain in the party.
Corbyn has been exposed. He's been exposed as an anti-Semite, exposed as a Marxist, exposed as someone who doesn't listen to the heartlands about Brexit.
Under Corbyn's leadership, many Labour voters outside of London have switched to the Brexit Party or the Conservative Party.
Polling suggests that he is the most unpopular opposition leader that we've ever seen since polling began back in the 1970s.
And if Johnson does win a clear majority, his goal is to take Britain out of the European Union by January 31st next year. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Still ahead, the former wife of an ISIS terrorist talks to CBN News about how to prevent acts of terrorism like the deadly shooting attack last Friday at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, Florida. We'll hear from her right after this.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to CBNNewsChannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
The ex-wife of an ISIS terrorist says she has some ideas of what can be done to prevent acts of terror like the one that occurred last Friday at the Pensacola Naval Air Station. Tanya Joya is now working with the Clarion Project's Preventing Violent Extremism program. On this week's episode of The Global Lane, Joya told Gary Lane that caution and education are the keys.
It's a difficult problem when you have non-U.S. military training on U.S. soil, unless they do like some sort of test to make sure that the foreigners have the same values. We're putting ourselves in danger.
Well, I know one criticism from Governor Ron DeSantis is that a Saudi national was able to actually purchase a gun in America. Do you think the attack may have been prevented if foreign nationals were not allowed to buy firearms? Your thoughts?
Yeah, there definitely needs to be, like, it has to be more difficult for people to get guns, especially foreigners from Saudi Arabia, which we do know has they've had radical indoctrination since the creation of Saudi Arabia. And clearly we see that Saudi terrorists have infiltrated their military. It's a problem for U.S. security, and I don't think that PVE, the Preventing Violent Extremism, can de-radicalize Saudis, but there has to be more caution in letting them train in the U.S.
Well, what else should be done to prevent this from happening again?
So with the PVE program that the Clarion Project has made up, we want to go to the schools in this country, to law enforcement, help social workers recognize the signs of how recruiters, how they persuade kids to join them. A lot of the children who are vulnerable to extremism and to cults are children from broken homes. And we see a pattern that there's usually missing fathers in the picture. So they don't have the positive role figures in their life to learn from. And it makes them vulnerable. There's also a huge backlash right now in society with what I call a war on white males and masculinity in this country, which is also marginalizing a lot of young children, young boys, who feel like it's a crime or it's toxic just to be themselves. It's very similar to my background when I was from a Muslim background, and when I was radicalized, I felt ostracized and I felt marginalized. I felt like no one likes Muslims, so the only people who accept me are the Muslim extremists. So it's a very similar mentality. And what PVE, Preventing Violent Extremism Workshop, does is that we help teach children, we give them counter narratives towards prejudice. We'll be teaching empathy and social responsibility so that these young people won't turn to a cult or violent extremism to deal with their grievances. We'll help them, we'll teach them how to put their anger into words and go through the political system, just basically to keep them out of harming society and ruining themselves and ruining their lives.
We've seen a lot of massacres in our schools, a lot of shootings there, and a lot of people are like, well, I never knew. This wasn't the type of person that I would expect would do that. So what should parents look for if their children are becoming radicalized?
Well, there's a lot. They become very political and angry, and it can happen as quickly as 2 months. I have a friend who lived in Belgium, and her son, at the age of 15, radicalized over 2 months and just left home, went and joined ISIS, and died. So that's why preventing is so important. And it's not about preventing those who've already started radicalizing. It's about educating youngsters before they even approach that difficult part of their life where they become so vulnerable and start wanting anarchy or becoming politicalized. We have to get to the kids and teach them the right value system before they're exposed to radical extremism. Part of de-radicalization for me was learning about other faiths, religions from the Middle East that came before Islam, that when Islam came into power, these religions came into decline. But it's part of the education. It's part of understanding where Islam came from. Where did Muhammad get his ideas? That would be part of the de-radicalization program that I would implement.
Tanya Joya, the Clarion Project's Preventing Violent Extremism program, thank you for sharing those insights.
And you can hear Joya explain how her American ex-husband became radicalized and joined ISIS. Also, a look at the secret Afghanistan papers. Have U.S. officials misled the public about the Afghan war? For those stories, watch The Global Lane tonight at 9:30 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel. Coming up, on a lighter note, we're going to show you how CBN is celebrating the Christmas season with our beautiful Christmas village filled with tons of lights, tinsel, and more. We'll bring you a special look when we come back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Get the top political news and analysis from Washington on Faith Nation, tonight at 6 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel.
Check out the CBN News Daily Rundown podcast each weekday with me, Caitlin Burke. Click on the show tab at cbnnews.com where you can listen and subscribe.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, especially here at CBN. We decked the halls of our campus with tinsel, tons of lights, and the area's most spectacular Christmas tree. The 700 Club's Ashley Key was on hand for the opening of our second annual Christmas Village, which is open again this weekend from today through Saturday. Take a look.
Christmas is here. Hi everyone, I'm Ashley Key with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and I'm here in a winter wonderland, a charming German-style Christmas village with fun for the whole family right here on the CBN and Regent University campus.
Your Christmas Village experience begins with our breathtaking 40-foot evergreens sparkling with over 25,000 lights and ornaments. Laughter ripples through the air as kids of all ages enjoy the village's festive rides and attractions.
What's your favorite part about the village?
Just seeing the decorations and seeing everything that's going on. It's kind of festive and gets you in the spirit.
The hot apple cider, because it's cold. Yeah. And the music. The music was nice in the chapel.
I just like the Christmas atmosphere and all of the different lights and just the people. They seem to be having a great time, so it's wonderful.
I'm here at my personal favorite spot out of all of CBN's Christmas Village, Santa's Cottage, complete with elves and Mrs. Claus.
Okay, so what did you ask Santa for Christmas?
Batmobile that transforms into a robot.
A Batmobile that transforms into a robot? That's awesome.
And you wanted a scooter.
A scooter? Oh my goodness.
Warm up with some hot cider and chat with Operation Blessing volunteers. Visit local artisans selling one-of-a-kind Christmas gifts and even swing by our CBN Superbook tent to watch an exclusive new Christmas episode.
And what Christmas celebration is complete without remembering the real reason why we celebrate Christmas, the birth of our Savior, the hope of the world, Jesus Christ.
In the season of hustle and bustle, I think this really kind of narrows it down to bring it back to why we celebrate and why it all really matters and brings us all together.
Yeah, it's just a wonderful reminder of why we're all here, Christmas, what it's all about, and it's just wonderful to get to see it acted out.
Because it's all about Jesus.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
You agree?
This is really a really nice way of bringing people together, just having fun, and I like that.
This is awesome. This is like a Hallmark movie brought to real life.
Oh my God.
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas! From our CBN and Regent University family to yours, a very blessed and Merry Christmas!
It is beautiful. Check it out. Well, that's it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or check us out on social media. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.